Welcome back everyone to a new episode of Dev Drawer. Last week we went over how to lock down your CRUD system by adding in administrative users, registering new users, changing them, adding them from the administration side, as well as being able to log into it. Today we're going to expand on that a little bit and make it where the navigation at the top changes. Some of the options that you see change based on the level that you have in the database. So let's go ahead and get started. So where we left off last week was we added Jane Doe. We finally got the add new user part on here. So we're going to essentially take what we have and we're going to make it where we want to add a header navigation up here for the users, because currently if you are logged into the website, you can't see any of the users. You can only see the employees that's coming from a different table. So what we need to do here is open up our header.php here, and we're going to add another link here, and we're going to label it as users, and this is going to go to the users page. So now if we refresh, we have dashboard, create new. Instead of create new, let's say new employee. So that way it doesn't get confusing between create new and create new user. So now we can go to this page and see the information that we want to have for that. Alright, so we don't have an update user or a delete user page yet. So let's go ahead and create that since we can access this page pretty quickly now. So we need to create a new page. We called it update user and delete user. So let's create a new page here, and we're going to call this update user.php and a new file called delete user.php. Again, this isn't the way you would normally do it. You wouldn't have all of your files set up like this. It would be more like routed out, kind of like how we're doing with the current route over there right here. You would have different routes for different pages, but for this purpose, just to kind of show you all of the files that are required, this is how we're going to do this. Alright, so we got our update user and we have our create user. So I'm going to come over here to our users page, and I'm going to copy all of this and paste it in here, because essentially whenever we get to that update user.php page, we want to display the same form that's on the add user. So we're going to take the form that we have inside of this, and we're going to remove it and just put it inside of the container so that it's all by itself outside of those the divs that we were using to display those tabbed interfaces. So let's refresh that. Alright, so that's what we want to see. We also don't want to give the ability to a user or an administrator to update a password. We want it to be where if you wanted to have a user choose a new password, you would send them an email where it allows them to generate a new hash. You don't want to do that from inside of your system. It's just a personal preference, but I'm also not going to go over how to send that email. You just have to kind of use what you have right here, and you can create a route or a page that looks up in the database for the hash as well as an ID. You can combine them inside the email, but you can do that by using an update statement. So I'll let y'all kind of work out that how you want to, but the way that you would normally do it is put something like update or send password. Actually, let's do a reset password link. So it's just going to display this little link right here that you click on it. It'll generate an email to your users if you had emails inside of your system, which we do not. So this is something we're just going to skip over for now because it's pretty in-depth how we're going to do it. Alright, so instead of doing create user, we're going to do update user, which is going to change this to btn update user as well. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and change this to btn update user. So we can go ahead and get rid of the password field because we're no longer using that, and we're going to point them to a new function we're going to call update user. Let's go ahead and get rid of the password there as well. Now we have the ID that we need, so we need to create a function that grabs a single user. So let's open up our functions, functions.php. I'm going to close that so I can see everything. And then we're going to, let's first create the update user statement. And I'm going to do that by copying our previous update statement, because like I said, the functionality doesn't really change. So we're just going to paste it right here, and we're no longer using this. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. So let's change this to update user statement. And now we're going to change this to update user, and we're going to pass a username, which we are going to make it where it's not an editable field. It's just going to be a visual only field. And then we're also going to be passing the active flag, level, and ID. So the reason why we're not setting these to null, because they're going to be using those drop downs, so it's going to be pre-selected. There's not anything that you can, you're not going to be able to pass anything else through it. So let's go ahead and change this to users instead of employees. We're going to set the username equals question, fname, lname. We're going to change this to active, and then we're going to change or add a level equals question, and then where the ID equals this. So we're going to be passing over 3 strings and 3 integers, which is going to be the ID, the level, active, and then over here we're going to be passing over the user name. Okay, so then it's going to, let's see, we don't need to change this, because if they don't make any changes, we'll let them know. Successfully updated the selected user instead of employee, and that should be it for the update user function. So now what we need to do is actually get the user, and we already have this select single user statement. So at the top of our, let me close out some of these files because they're all over the place right now. Okay, so users, we need that one. Let's close that, close this, close this. Alright, so we got our update here. So we need to, inside of our updates user page, we need to get that user information and display it. So we're going to do user equals, if it is set, we're going to grab the ID in the get statement. And if it is set, we're just going to do select single user, get the ID, or we're going to return false. Okay, so now if we go back to this page, nothing's changed because we haven't added anything to it, but now we can go down here and set the value for this to be PHP echo user fname. And if we refresh, now we have, this is our test user because we're actually going to edit ourselves, which we don't want to do. So let's go and update Jane Doe. Alright, and then I'm going to copy this to here, and I'm also going to display it here, but I'm going to set the box as read only. So let's change this to username because we don't want to accidentally change someone's username. Their username is there, no one else can have it, so once they have it, they have it. This is just for reference to make sure you're updating the person that you selected. Now here it's going to be a little bit more difficult because if you remember in a previous video we were declaring these things, pretty much hard coding them in, but what we want to do in this instance is we're going to create an array at the top. It's going to be a very simple array, so don't worry about it too much, but essentially I'm just going to pass those variables. So I'm going to call it active array, and it's going to be an array, and we're going to pass the key of 0, and that's going to equal inactive, and we don't necessarily have to pass the key. It could just be inactive and active, but I'm just to demonstrate a point, we're going to be passing them over. And we also need to do the same thing for the level array. So level array equals array, and then 0 equals 0 dash view only, and then 1 equals 1 dash admin. Okay, so now we have two arrays that we're going to use inside of our select statements. So let's scroll down here. So inside of this, where we have our options, we're going to do a for each loop for these. So PHP for each active array as key, and we're just going to call the variable active. So if key equals the user active variable, we want it to display, make the option selected. So we're going to do selected equals, and we're just going to do this because this is the space. The selected will make that next item selected. Then we're going to do else, and then we're just going to make the variable for selected equal nothing if it doesn't equal it. And then we're going to do an end if, and then end for each, and we're going to close that out. So now we can actually come back in here. Since we have our if statements, we can do echo option value equals key, and then selected key, then select it. And you notice I didn't put a space here because at the top is where I put that space at. And then we're going to say active for the option label. Okay, so now we can get rid of these two. So before I do the other one, I'm going to go ahead and refresh it here. And you can see that it's currently inactive. So let's find tester. It's currently active. So let's go back over here to Jane Doe at inactive. Alright, so we're going to do this exact same thing to our level. So let's go ahead and get rid of these two. And we're going to do level array as level. And then the key has to equal the user. And then pretty much the exact same thing that we've done prior to this, and we can verify that here by going to this one. Level array as key is level. If key was selected this. Echo key selected level. Over here, I think in the database we have the level. Oh, we don't have any of the levels set. Okay, so let's change this to a 1. Now if we refresh, admin. Alright, so that's what we wanted to see. So now we have an administrative user, and then we have Jane Doe, which is our regular user. So let's go over here and let's edit Jane Doe and say we want to do Jane Doe. Then we're going to update that user. Too few arguments for the function update user. Create user, update user. We're passing username, fname, lname, active, level. Username, fname, lname, active, level, ID. Okay, so that makes sense. So we actually need to do a input type equals hidden value equals echo get ID, and then we're going to name this ID. Alright, so let's go back here refresh this, and I'm just going to verify that it's grabbing the correct ID, so ID of 7, ID of 7. So let's change this back to Jane Doe, hit update user, too few arguments. I need to pass it now. Alright, so ID equals ID post. So now let's just refresh this. There we go. Successfully updated the selected user, which we can see now she's Jane Doe. Let's change her back to Jane Doe and update this. And let's go ahead and make her active. So now we can go over here and see that we have 2 active users. Okay, so the next step is going to be this delete.php or delete user.php. And inside of this delete user, it's going to be essentially the same kind of call that we have in our delete.php. We're just going to change the function that it's calling. So this is going to be delete user instead of delete. Alright, so now let's go back to our functions, and we need to create that delete user, which is going to be essentially the same thing as the delete statement that we have at the top. Alright, so we got our update, so we're going to put delete user statement. Delete from users, where ID equals the ID that's being passed to the delete user. Delete user or delete users? Delete user function. Okay, and then you select, successfully deleted the selected user. Okay. Alright, and then we want it to redirect to users instead of redirecting to the home page. Okay, so now let's go ahead and delete Jane Doe. Confirm, successfully deleted the selected user. Alright, so now we have the CRUD part of our user system implemented. So what we want to do is we have these levels that are set up for a reason. So, you know, level 1 and level 0. So level 0 is just going to be a read-only employee. So we want to make it where when a level 0 logs into the website, they are not necessarily seeing new employees or users or, you know, any of this stuff. So we want them to see the dashboard and not even these update or delete fields, just a read-only version of the dashboard. Alright, so in order to do that, I'm going to create a function called auth for authenticate. So we're going to validate user can access pages. And essentially what I'm going to do with this function is I'm going to check to see if the session level is greater than or equal to 1. So if session user, because that's what we decided it was going to be in the previous video, is less than 1, we are going to display a message, and I'm just going to copy this over so I don't have to retype that whole thing. It's going to be a danger message, and we're going to say you are not authorized to view that page. Okay, and then we're going to do header location, and we're just going to redirect them to the dashboard. So that way if they click on anything that's not part of what they can actually do, it's just going to redirect them to the dashboard or the index.php page. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this function and we're going to add it to our header.php. Not our header.php. Where we should add this at. So if we want them to not be able to access certain pages, we need to add it to the certain pages. Because if we add it to header.php, it's going to make it where they can't log into any page. So let's say users. This is going to be the first one we want to add it to. So inside the top of our users.php, we're just going to, after the functions include, we're going to do the auth function. Essentially what that's going to do is, as soon as they hit this page, and if they're not authorized to hit this page, then they'll just be redirected straight out. So you are not authorized to see this page, authorized to view that page. My level is 1. I think I need to log out and log back in because I changed my level after I'd logged in and stored that session. So let's do tester and then password again and try it again. So the reason why it kicked me back last time is because I changed the variable for the level, but that was after I logged in, and the login is where they store the sessions. So the session was still reading as a 0 for my authentication level. But you saw what it did. It kicked me back to the home page and told me that I didn't have access to view that page. So for every page that I don't want them to hit, I'm going to include this auth code. You could create a new kind of like what we did with the header. You could do like an auth.php for anything additional that you would like to do for authorization. But for simplistic purposes, I'm just going to come in here and add it to each one of the pages that I don't want this user to be able to hit. Let me go ahead and close all of these to the right so I don't have to keep scrolling up. Alright, so there. And the register we need to keep, log out, log in, we need to keep free of it. The index, keep free of it. This one could use it. This one could also use it. The create could also use it. So now if we logged in with jdoe, so let's log in with jdoe, and I believe his was password. It's not been enabled. So let's browse, hit jdoe, and we're going to make it active of 1. Okay, so let's go back to jdoe. Password. Alright, so now if I try to click on this, it's going to kick me back to the dashboard every time. Okay, but that can get confusing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to check for that session variable and then change the navigation menu and then change the script that's calling this. Alright, so let's open up our header.php, and I'm going to close all of these to the right again. Okay, so in the header.php we have these 2 links. So I'm going to wrap these in an if statement. So if session user level is greater than or equal to 1, just in case you ever wanted to do something in the future with it, display this. If not, then it just doesn't display it. And if. Okay, so now we should be able to refresh this and see that those links are now gone. So this part down here is a little more complicated. And I say that because it's not actually being pulled by PHP, so we can't just throw in a PHP script. But what we can do is change the class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code that we just did here, and we're going to go to our index.php, and over here I'm going to change, or I'm gonna modify this a little bit. So let's go ahead and put this all together, and it's going to be we're going to create a variable called table class equals data table, which is already there, else. And that else statement is going to basically say that whenever they are not an administrative user, we're going to call a different variation of that script. And actually, this is an echo statement, so let me do it the other shortcode way. So let's get rid of this for now. Actually, let me copy this over because I'm going to be using this in my echo statement. Alright, and let me close this. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say PHP echo and then session, and it's going to check If it equals, is it greater than or equal to 1? If it is, it's going to display data table. If it's not, it's going to display data table simple. And then we just close out our PHP and get rid of the original data table call. Okay, so now if I come back over here and refresh, nothing's there because that script that controls this is actually not being hit right now because that data table simple doesn't exist. So we're going to go into our JavaScript and we're going to copy this and paste it down. So we're going to call it, nope, that's not the one we wanted to copy. Let's see, data table right here. So data table, and we're going to say data table simple. I believe how it was called, data table simple. All right, and then we're going to get the same get statement. We're just going to remove this, and then we're also going to remove this because it's no longer needed since there is not a column that doesn't need to be ordered. So if we refresh, hard refresh. Okay, so the reason why it's displaying it like this is because on index.php it still has these that section there. So we're just going to come over here and essentially do the same thing that we did here, just for the th instead. So if it is good, we're going to display the th, and then if you can't, we're going to not display anything. Okay, so now that should fix the formatting. There we go. Alright, so now if we log out with John Doe and we log back in with our tester administrator account, we can see that we still have all of the options available to us. So let's log out again and go back in with Doe password. Alright, so now if we try to hit any of these other pages, so let's go try to users, it says that we can't access it. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. So let's log out, and I'm going to look through my notes. I believe that that is going to probably conclude this video because that shows you the authentication. Okay, so I think that that's it for the CRUD application. It took a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 videos for a four-part video, but I think I finally made it through. So if you're here with me and you've seen all the videos, I do appreciate it. But let's just do a quick recap of what we did in the videos. So we created a CRUD system, so create, read, update, and delete. It's using PHP and MySQLi. It's connected to a MySQL database. We made it where you can log into it and as well as register for an account. And once you're in it, you can see it's pulling that read from the CRUD where you can actually see data that it's being pulled out of the database for this employees table. You can go over here and create a new employee. You can come over here and view the users or add a new user. So this is pretty much a very simple self-contained CRUD system. It uses data tables to display the pretty tables like this. It uses jQuery and Bootstrap for a lot of the functionality and the look that you see. And then it also uses Font Awesome for the icons like this. It utilizes masking, so you can do phone numbers like this automatically, and then it also uses jQuery validation in order to show the bootstrapped error messages whenever a field is not filled out that needs to be. So I think that was it for this series. I am planning on doing a new series, maybe going into object-oriented programming, maybe starting off with like the basics, because there's probably a little bit in here that I went into that a lot of people, I'm assuming, are probably going to comment and say that, hey, that's not the way that you do it. And I'm fully aware that's not the way that you do it. This is a very simplistic CRUD system. The way that you would do it is, instead of having one functions.php file, you would have these included classes, and you would reference those classes. So instead of calling this function directly, you would reference it through a call of a class. You would set public and private and protected variables. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do to this to make it a little bit better. So I think I'm going to get into that next time. And then after that, I have a really cool way that I built our local development server here using a USB solid state drive running full version of Linux. And it's very cool how I did it, and it's easy to replicate without having to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on hardware and software to be able to generate your own server, so we don't have to use WAMP anymore. But for this video series, for the whole CRUD, it was great. I hope y'all enjoyed it. So for the time being, like and subscribe. And definitely hit that notification bell. We try to do a premiere every Friday. So thanks for now, and we'll talk to you later.